Think about the last time you stepped into a highly competitive space. Or, like, really just picture the absolute pinnacle of high-level Pokemon battling.
Right. It's
Yeah,
intense.
you inevitably imagine noise, right? You picture the blinding, flashing lights of a stadium, the rapid-fire commands echoing over the crowd.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just this raw, explosive energy of two hyper-optimized forces colliding. It is a space entirely defined by speed, by raw power, and by imposing your will onto your opponent as loudly and as forcefully as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the competitive mindset is just inherently loud.
Yeah.
You know, you're taught from day one that viability basically equals aggression.
Right.
It's hyper-optimized, it's unrelenting, and it leaves absolutely zero room for hesitation. In that environment, you either act immediately or you lose.
But then you step away from the arenas, you walk away from the cheering crowds and the blinding lights, and you travel to a quiet, fog-heavy graveyard in Kanto.
Lavender Town.
Exactly. You step into Lavender Town, and suddenly all that noise just evaporates. You are left with absolute, uncomfortable silence.
Which is, it's the ultimate subversion of what we are conditioned to expect from a powerful presence in this universe.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating document we received simply titled TiraSpokenNotes.pdf.
Such a read.
So good. And our mission today is to explore the incredible intersection of narrative storytelling and strategic gameplay design by unpacking the character study of Tira, who is just a profoundly unique trainer and gym leader. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Unlike your typical protagonist who leaves home seeking gym badges or, craving glory or trying to catch them all, Tira is a channeler from Lavender Town. Her entire existence, her whole methodology revolves around stillness, memory, and understanding.
And we have to be clear from the start here. The notes we're analyzing aren't just a bit of flavorful character backstory.
Right, it's more than that.
Exactly. This document is an absolute masterclass in game design. It demonstrates how a character's core, intimate psychology and arguably should completely dictate their competitive battling style.
Yeah, everything she is narratively.
Translates perfectly into how she operates mechanically on the field.
It's wild. So let's start at the beginning. In Lavender Town. This is a place that is fundamentally built on grief.
Yeah, heavy atmosphere.
Very heavy. The source notes detail how children her age and even visiting trainers completely avoided the Pokémon Tower. They were terrified of it. They whispered about spirits, about voices, about things watching them from the dark.
Even the veterans?
Right. Even strong veteran trainers would walk a little faster, look down at the ground when passing by the graves. But Tira, she just lingered.
And she didn't linger because she was like entirely fearless in some bravado sense, or because she was playing the part of a dark, brooding edgelord.
Yeah.
She lingered because her perception of the world was fundamentally different from those around her. The notes specify that she didn't hear ghost voices like some cliché horror movie. She heard patterns.
Yes. A pause where something once was. A weight in the air where memory had settled. That description from the text is just so vivid.
It's beautiful.
It reminds me of how a truly brilliant musician listens, like an amateur listens to the melody, they focus on the notes being played, the loud parts.
Right, the obvious stuff.
Exactly. But a master musician listens to the silence between the notes. They understand that the empty space is what actually gives the music its shape and meaning. Tira is listening to the silence of the tower.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And because she was listening to the space between things, her relationship with ghost-type Pokémon was radically different from a standard trainer's.
How so?
Well, she didn't catch them. In fact, she actively disliked that word. Yeah. She met a wandering Mistravis. She observed a flicker of light that eventually became Litwick. She acknowledged a watching presence that would become Disquire. And they stayed.
Just on their own.
Completely on their own. Not because she commanded them or trapped them in a Pokeball to bind them to her will, but because of her stillness. They were drawn to the fact that she didn't try to change them or rush them.
Naturally, in a town completely defined by mourning, her comfort with the dead was heavily misunderstood by the locals. People thought she was wrong.
Yeah, they didn't get it.
The document says, grief doesn't always know how to recognize peace. They saw a young girl standing quietly with spirits, and it unnerved them because they expected her to be afraid.
It's a very human reaction, honestly.
It is, and there's this quote in the source that absolutely stopped me in my tracks. Not everything that lingers is meant to be released. Some things remain because they're still becoming.
Man, it completely reframes the concept of a ghost.
doesn't it?
In most lore, a ghost is stuck. It's a tragedy that needs to be solved, or an anomaly that needs to be banished. But Tira looks at these lingering spirits and realizes that their remaining isn't a failure to move on. It's an active state of gestation.
They are still becoming.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how Tira completely redefines the trainer archetype. A typical trainer imposes their will on nature. They capture, they train, they direct.
Right.
Tira does none of that. She doesn't impose her will. She creates a space for power to exist exactly as it is.
I have to admit, as much as I appreciate the poetry of that, I struggled with the practicality of it.
How do you mean?
Well, if her whole identity is about not controlling, about not commanding these spirits, how can she possibly function in a world built entirely around capturing, battling, and dominating opponents? Like, how do you take a philosophy of total non-interference out into a competitive meta?
That is the exact pivotal tension of her character arc. A philosophy of total non-interference eventually hits a wall.
It has to.
Right. You can only learn so much by watching from the window, because eventually the outside world demands your engagement.
And in Tira's case, the outside world arrived in the form of a massive anomaly, a grass-type trico that just appeared on her windowsill.
Which is so out of place for Lavender Town.
Completely out of place. It wasn't handed to her in a lab by a professor with a Pokédex. It just showed up, watching her. For a long time, they just coexisted, observing each other through the glass.
That's waiting.
Yeah. Until one night, a storm rolled through, the air got heavy, and Trico finally stepped inside. And it stayed.
Trico is the catalyst for her outward journey. When Tira finally steps beyond Lavender Town, it isn't to escape her home, but to test her understanding against the broader world.
Right.
And Trico, which eventually evolves into Sceptile, acts as her reflection. Notice that the notes explicitly state they didn't battle at first.
Oh yeah, they totally avoided it.
Exactly. They acted as observers, entirely avoiding the competitive circuit. Dracula evolved into Sceptile not through dramatic, high-stakes gym battles, but through quiet consistency, observing wild Pokémon, and crucially, choosing when not to fight.
But then comes the turning point. She's traveling outside Kanto, far from the quiet of Lavender Town, and she runs into a trainer who is the exact opposite of her.
Oh, the aggressive one?
Fast, aggressive, certain, someone who doesn't hesitate for a second, and Tira just gets absolutely crushed. Sceptile is overwhelmed because Tira is trying to slowly, carefully understand the battle in real time, and she is just too slow to react to the raw aggression.
And her reaction to this crushing defeat is what separates her from the traditional protagonist.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel fear. She doesn't feel sadness or a burning anger at her opponent.
What does she feel?
She feels misalignment.
Misalignment. And honestly, this is where I realized my own view of her needed adjusting. You know, you can't just be an empath on the sidelines forever.
No, you really can't.
True empathy, true understanding of other people's motives requires getting into the arena with them. You have to feel their pressure to understand their choices. Here's why it gets really interesting. Losing didn't make her want to dominate that fast trainer.
Not at all.
It didn't make her want to grind levels, optimize her stats, and seek revenge. It made her realize, if I want to understand others, I can't remain passive. It made her want to participate.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Tira's entry into the world of battling isn't about victory at all. It is entirely about revealing truth.
Revealing truth.
Yes, she battles to strip away habit, noise, and assumption from her opponent. Sceptile becomes her living shadow in this regard. It represents her internal growth made visible.
I love that concept.
Right. The notes mention that when Tira hesitates, trying to process the complex emotional landscape of the battle, Sceptile inherently understands and acts on her behalf.
Because she starts engaging with the world to understand it rather than just to conquer it, she inadvertently becomes a mirror for everyone she fights. Her active participation transforms her from a wandering observer into a destination. She becomes an unintentional gym leader.
Unintentional is the perfect word. She never sought the title or the prestige.
No.
But trainers who felt stuck, trainers who lost to her and couldn't figure out why they felt so off during the match, began returning to Lavender Town just to find her. They weren't seeking a badge to enter the Pokémon League. They were seeking her insight into their own flaws.
And the Pokémon League actually recognized this phenomenon. Instead of forcing her into a standard gym format or moving her to a major city to draw crowds, they uniquely allowed her to remain in Lavender Town.
Yeah, they established the Memory Sanctum.
A fusion of tower, memory, and stillness. It's a gym where you aren't tested on how hard your Pokémon can hit or how fast they are. You are tested on what you fail to notice.
To facilitate this deeply psychological test, She added what the notes call her mind layer Pokémon. First, Slowking.
Oh, the encounter with Slowking was so subtle.
Incredibly subtle. They just understood each other's pacing. Slowking gave a physical form to her instinctive habits, pausing, interpreting, and reframing the situation, rather than simply reacting to it.
And then there's Uxie, the legendary Pokemon of knowledge. Uxie didn't even join her team in the traditional subservient sense. It just acknowledged her.
Yeah, it was a mutual respect.
It looked at her and essentially communicated. You seek knowledge not to control but to understand. It didn't grant her raw, destructive power. It gave her absolute clarity, and the result is wild.
It really is.
After battling this mind layer, challengers say they don't remember the specific moves used or how strong her team was statistically. They just remember the profound feeling that they were quietly understood.
Which is an incredibly heavy burden for a challenger, you know. By removing the traditional parameters of winning and losing, Tira dismantles her opponent's egos entirely. She strips away the comfort of the standard competitive script.
It's like, imagine walking into a boxing gym. You've got your gloves laced up, you are ready to throw punches, you've studied the tapes.
Right, you're pumped up.
And instead of a sparring partner, you find yourself in a deep, agonizing therapy session where you suddenly realize all your own deeply hidden insecurities. You walk in expecting a brawl, and you walk out with a crushing sense of self-awareness.
And that psychological weight is crucial to understand because it perfectly justifies the agonizing psychological warfare of her actual in-game battle strategy. This isn't just lore dressing. It translates directly into how her team functions mechanically at a high competitive level.
Let's get into those mechanics, because the translation from narrative to gameplay is seamless. Her 6-Pokemon competitive team operates on a core strategy called resonance control.
A great name.
And the notes explicitly state, this team is not about fast sweeping. It is entirely about tempo distortion, forced misreads, and delayed consequences.
Let's break down the 4 layers of synergy that make this resonance control work, because it is brilliantly frustrating for the human player on the other side of the screen.
Oh, I bet. So what's layer 1?
Layer 1 is status and distortion. She leads with Uxie and Slowking, spreading Thunder Wave, while Dust Noir uses Will-O-Wisp.
Ah, to burn them.
Right. By spreading these statuses early, she's instantly neutering the opponent's speed tiers and physical win conditions. Suddenly, their hyper-offense sweepers are outsped by a Slowking, and their physical wall breakers are hitting like wet paper.
Wait, I have to challenge this, though. If she's just throwing out status moves and retreating, what stops a highly aggressive player from anticipating that? Say they just bring in a ground-type immune to electricity or a raw special wall breaker and just power through her setup before it takes hold.
Well, that is exactly the kind of impatience she preys on. And it leads directly into Layer 2, delayed consequences.
Okay, how does that work?
Slowking uses Future Sight. As we know, this psychic attack doesn't hit immediately. It drops 2 turns later. This isn't just about delayed damage. It's a zoning tool that creates a paralysis of choice.
Right, the mental stab.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine you have your Star Sweeper out. You're burned. And Future Sight is locked in for the next turn. You know if you stay in, you faint.
Yeah.
If you switch to your defensive wall, it eats a massive psychic attack meant for your sweeper. It forces bad switches and creates a rising sense of panic, especially when combined with the crippled speed tiers from Layer 1. The opponent stops playing their game and is forced to play hers.
And while you are panicking about when Future Sight is going to drop, she is executing Layer 3, Pivot and Flow. Uxie uses U-turn to hit and immediately pivot out.
Such a frustrating move.
Right. And Slowking uses its regenerator ability, meaning every time it switches, it heals 1/3 of its health. You can never pin her down. She's just slipping through your fingers, repositioning safely, while the delayed damage and status effects completely erode your team.
And this is where the human element completely breaks down. Because the opponent has spent 3 turns terrified of Future Sight and trying to safely pivot out their paralyzed Pokemon, their natural instinct is to finally set up a defensive wall, heal, or boost their stats to regain control.
Just to breathe for a second.
Exactly. But Tira anticipates that exact moment of desperation. Layer 4 engages, breaking and cleaning.
Yes, Chandelure and Miss Magus. Chandelure comes in holding choice specs, making it a nuclear threat, but uses Trick to permanently cripple defensive walls by swapping items with them.
It's so mean.
And Miss Magus, it anticipates the opponent's need to heal or set up and drops Taunt.
That taunt is devastating. It strips away the opponent's ability to heal or use status moves, entirely shattering their safety net. They're forced to attack when they want to defend.
Wow.
And once the opponent's team is thoroughly paralyzed, burned, battered by Future Sight, tricked out of their items, and completely out of rhythm,
Sceptile, the living shadow, enters. It comes in holding a focus sash, guaranteeing it survives any one massive hit the opponent throws in a blind panic.
the insurance policy.
Yep. It uses Endeavor, dropping the opponent's health to exactly match Sceptile's one remaining hit point. It strips away all their stat boosts, all their bravado, and brings them right down to her level of vulnerability, allowing Sceptile to easily clean up whatever is left standing.
It's masterful.
So what does this all mean? Fighting this team is literally like walking through a funhouse mirror maze while the floor is slowly tilting beneath you. You think you are making tactical choices, but Tira is actually making them for you. You aren't deciding anymore. You are only reacting to the traps she set 3 turns ago.
This raises an important question, not just for this specific meta, but for any competitive strategy. Can creating mental hesitation in your opponent be more effective than raw statistical power?
I think this proves it can be.
Right. The notes say something crucial at the very end of the document. This team does not win because it is mathematically the most optimal or the most powerful. It wins because it creates a space where the opponent simply cannot think clearly. They defeat themselves through their own impatience.
It perfectly encapsulates who Tira is. She doesn't overpower you. She forces you to drown in your own lack of awareness. It is brilliant. Tira's journey is just incredible. She goes from being a quiet, misunderstood observer in the graveyards of Lavender Town to a master of resonance control who runs the Memory Sanctum.
It's a huge character arc.
It is. She proves that the most compelling characters and the most terrifyingly effective competitive strategies are built on deep, consistent personal philosophies. In a world that is completely obsessed with loud dominance, with being the fastest, with hitting the hardest, Tira shows us that there is immense disruptive power in stillness, in observation, and in truly understanding the environment around you.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Building on that idea, Tira's entire battle style is meticulously designed to reveal the hidden truths and flaws of her opponents by forcing them out of their comfort zones and into a state of uncomfortable delayed reaction.
Right.
Imagine if you had to face your own version of resonance control in your everyday life. If your own daily habits, your quick assumptions, your need to always be moving, fixing, and acting were suddenly neutralized. What would a battle against yourself look like? If the constant noise of your life was stripped away, what hidden weaknesses would the silence force you to confront?